Hey everyone, welcome back to Draft of the Future. This is Ryan with my Week 8 player updates. So we're going to get right into it. I've got Clev Lovin from Louisville. They had a massive game, right? They took down the number 2 team in the country. He was closing down the pocket a lot against a great team. He didn't have the sacks that you would like, in a big game like that. But he was getting a ton of pressure, forcing Beck to dump the ball out quickly. And then, of course, Beck was throwing the ball to the other team a lot. He had this one play where Miami tried like a little bit of a trick play out to the left side of the offense, and he made a great play to stop them from being able to get that deep throw, which they were trying to do. And honestly, that was my favorite play that he made throughout the game. They called probably the most absurd roughing the passer call on him that negated what would have been Beck's third pick at the time. Beck ended up having a third pick later on. But he still had a great game and was very impactful. Clev Lubin, love the guy. I think he is worth a day 2 pick for me. All right, Isaiah Nokobia. So this has been a few weeks in a row now where the SMU safety has started to play like the guy that I watched in summer scouting. He had a really great game against Clemson. He didn't miss a tackle. He was solid in coverage. He only allowed one catch. He looked a lot more like he had last year. He looks like he's got some speed back to him. I don't know if it was maybe an injury issue that we didn't know about, dealing with some things, but he looks a lot better now. Cade Klubnik was out due to an injury. D'Angelo Pons had a pretty solid game against a good wide receiver core. He did allow 4 catches on 6 targets, but he limited the yak on that, made the tackles right after the catches were made, and he didn't have a missed tackle at all. So, he didn't have his best game, but considering who they were playing against with a really good wide receiver, Nick Marsh, he did a good job. All right. Whit Weeks from LSU did not play. Dante Corleone from the Bearcats, he only played 23 snaps, and I don't remember seeing him in the second half. So I'm not sure if he got injured or something like that, but he didn't really look healthy to me. The game, he struggled. They struggled against the run, and so I'm a little concerned there. He's had some injury issues, but it was not his best game at all. And then he, like I said, he only played 23 snaps, so he wasn't in there a ton. Now, Darius Taylor, running back from Minnesota. Look who is healthy. He had this incredible 71-yard run where he showcased the things I liked about him, his vision, his ability to break tackles, and his breakaway speed. Unfortunately, he did step out on the one right before going in for what would have been a touchdown. But that play shows everything that I really like about him. He easily could have been tackled much earlier, but he was able to make the right cut, break a tackle, and then just hit the gas. He ended with nearly 150 yards and then 4 catches for 16 yards as well, looking like the guy that I looked at all summer. Joe Royer for the Bearcats, he had all 5 targets that he had were caught for 63 yards and a touchdown. Had a really good game. He's such a mismatch with his size and speed, and he's starting to get used a little bit more. Again, if I was his offensive coordinator, I would be scheming things up for him to get more touches, because he's just such a mismatch against the people that are typically going to be guarding him. So I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be phenomenal in the league, and I love watching him play. Eric McAllister for TCU. He had 7 catches on 12 targets for 62 yards. Another solid week. He's getting a lot more targets than he was earlier in the season. He did have a drop, but it wasn't necessarily the greatest game, but it was still solid, and I'm starting to see him get the trust of his quarterback a lot more. Now Tarantayo, the guard from Cincinnati, this was his best game of the season, in my opinion. He didn't allow a single pressure. He was an absolute animal in the run game. He looked like he was really strong off the snap, um, getting a lot of push in the run. He the way that this O line as a whole is coming together is really insane. And as the team, the O line is starting to gel, it seems like his play is improving too. So Taron Tayo is a guy that I really, I'm really high on. And I think he is going to be a guy that can start in the league for quite a while. And what Nick Cardwell, their offensive line coach, is doing at Cincinnati is just honestly unreal. You could potentially draft every single person on that line. All right. Brian Parker II out of Duke. So he only allowed one pressure, but he did struggle a little bit against the run. I love watching him play though. He is one of those guys that I think when he moves to the interior in the NFL, he's going to be elite. I think he's probably going to be a day 2 guy. He's going to go round 3 is what I'm expecting. I would take him personally higher than that, but I think he's going to end up going round 2, 3. And a team's going to switch him to guard or center. If you watch the Draft Professor much, some of our friends over there, they had a former NFL offensive lineman on talking about him, and he talked about his ability to switch to the center position and how he thinks that is a great position for him going forward. So that's what I expect. And I think that, he's going to bounce back. I think they have UConn this week, which is a sneaky team. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. But Brian Parker, again, he still was solid against the pass, but he struggled a little bit against the run. Mark Gronowski, my Iowa quarterback, as a passer, he wasn't very accurate. Didn't seem to have much timing. So he was not great as a passer this week. But his legs really did a good job against Penn State. Now I know Penn State was playing a freshman with Drew Aller out, but he had a ton of rushing yards, and his legs is what sealed the game and allowed them to beat Penn State. John Michael Gillenborg, the tight end from Wyoming, was able to get back on the field for 8 snaps and 1 target. So don't have much to say there. Couldn't really see anything. But he's been injured for a while now. So I'm gonna have to check back on him later on to see how he does. And then our last guy, our first round edge, David Bailey. He did have a very dumb roughing the passer penalty on a 4th and goal that allowed Arizona State to go up 9. So that was one of those things that I was like, man, like you can't do that. And from a pass rush win rate perspective, this was his worst game so far. It was under 10%. But he did make the most of those wins. He did end up with 2 sacks, 4 pressures. So it was still a successful week for him in terms of the stat sheet, but he wasn't winning as often. Now, he's still one of those guys that you expect to go first round. So that's all I've got for this week. If you haven't seen it already, we did an interview with Landon Robinson, the defensive tackle out of Navy who leads the nation in sacks from the interior. And he has the best pass rush of any defensive tackle in the FBS. It was a great interview. He's a great guy. The story came out this past week, but this coming Saturday at 11 o'clock, we are going to release the full interview that's uncut. So make sure you check that out and support him because he's a guy that is going to be drafted this year. I feel confident guaranteeing he's going to be drafted and might be higher than you expect. But make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Catch you next time.